What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode number 464 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. It's KB and Matt coming at you with a loaded show. Tonight, we got to talk Phils, we got to talk Union, we got to talk Eagles, and it is the week before Survivor Season 43, so we're going to give you our Survivor preseason discussions at the end of the show for the real ones. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch, so what's up to everybody that's not normally watching live, but we got big-time things to talk about tonight. But before we get started, make sure you guys are following us on the socials at UndergroundPHI on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.com/UndergroundSportsPHI, Twitch.tv/UndergroundSportsPHI. Big-time stuff going on over on the socials, so make sure you're following us there. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Check out the website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com, for all of our written content. Subscribe to the podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Subscribe, leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. Helps more people find the show. Gets more people involved with Underground Sports. And, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, where you get full video episodes of every single podcast on our network, from Underground Sports Philadelphia to Top Bins with Matt and Dom, Outside the Box with myself and DJ, plus a whole slew of other podcasts on our YouTube channel. And we're on that road to 1K. So make sure you subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend, smash the like button, ring that bell icon, and comment down below with your thoughts on the Phillies, the Union, the Eagles, preseason Sixers, and of course Survivor as well. Big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen: Main Auto LLC, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland, our homies over at Pickup. We'll talk to you guys about them a little later on in the show. Tomahawk Shades, the best small batch eyewear in the game. Go to tomahawkshades.com and use code USP for 25% off your order of sunglasses, blue light glasses, watches, hoodies, shirts, and everything in between at tomahawkshades.com. Use code USP at checkout for 25% off your order. Our pals over at Kenwood Beer, best merch drop I've seen in a long time from any company, let alone a beer company. They got the Kenny rope hats and the It's a Bad Day to Be a Kenny shirts still available. Go get them before they're gone. And, of course, use that all-new and improved Kenny tracker on kenwoodbeer.com and see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap in the Philadelphia area. You got to be 21 or older to do so. And, of course, please drink responsibly. And, of course, our pals over at Bino, they dropped the Team France board last week in their World Cup drops. And I don't know if this was planned or not, Matt, but this coming Friday, they're dropping the Team England board. Very timely, if you will, and it looks sweet, so go check that out at binoboard.com. Set your alarms, because that thing's going to drop on Friday at noon Eastern time, and you can go to binoboard.com, get your hands on any of the World Cup boards, your own custom board, or any boards they have available, plus merch and apparel, and you can use our code BINHOUSP, that's BINHOUSP, for 10% off your order at binoboard.com. What's going on, Matt?
Living the dream.
The Philadelphia Phillies are still living the dream, as it's almost time, but the playoffs are in sight as they beat the Marlins last night. And I think a useful piece of future bar trivia, Matt, will be which hitter in baseball during the 2022 MLB season hit 2 home runs off of Sandy Alcantara. And if that bar trivia happened tonight, the one and only player would be Nick Maton.
As we all would have guessed. Yeah, nice little homestand, which was the kind of the medicine Phillies needed. Go 5-1 on that short stint, kind of correct course a little bit, which is what we wanted them to do. Kind of what we expected them to be honest. It's felt like a really volatile, wild ride with the Phillies, but if you actually look at like the schedule, it hasn't really been. It's just,
No.
I think, been a big overcorrection. Anytime this team drops, 2 or 3 games in the span of a week, it's felt, it's felt much more disastrous than it's actually been. And you look at most teams are going to have these kind of peaks and valleys. Unless you're the Braves, apparently, you're just going to win every game since like June 20th.
It's insane.
But yeah, you just consider the Phillies' position now. You're not there yet, but the people who handle stats and infographics and things like that are getting the magic number sheets out that have not been touched. There's dust on a lot of those things.
I think the magic number is 17 right now.
Yeah, and we're climbing towards that being a graphic, on NBC Sports Philly now, and on ESPN. Like, I'm sure ESPN next week will have a magic number article or something. We're getting close to that type of season, which the Phillies have not been involved in a long time. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. I mean, I went back and looked because we made our preseason predictions, I think either in March or early April about this team with their win totals. You had them at 85 wins. I went super aggressive and said 89. And somehow, some way, by the faith and grace of our Lord and Savior, Rob Thompson, both of those numbers are attainable this year.
Yeah, I think, really the Phillies are trending much more towards your prediction, playing pretty much at like a 90-win pace, which would be great. And I think the only thing you can limit, like we've said before, is that we did make that manager decision earlier, because you think about where this team might be had they made that switch. But yeah, I mean, if the Phillies touch 90 wins, it's hard because I just think it's hard to conceptualize that, but that's a big milestone to reach that I'm not sure that I fully believe. I mean, I didn't fully believe that this team could make that mark this year. I just felt like, it could have been an underwhelming season. And, for the first 2 months, it was that way. But yeah, they've come a long way. It has been it's been a very strange journey, the start of this season.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and somehow, some way, they've turned this, god-awful first 2 months of the season into more than likely ending a decade-long postseason drought. And I think that's one of the more unbelievable stories in all of baseball this year. And I saw a John Morosi tweet today that really put things in perspective, I think, for this Phillies season in terms of how damn good Rob Thompson has been as the manager of this team. So John Morosi tweeted, the Phillies are 57-33 under Rob Thompson, trailing only the Dodgers and the Braves among NL teams in that time. And if MLB's postseason began today, the NL's longest active playoff drought would be over, and the Phillies would play a wild card series in Atlanta. I find it very difficult to justify anyone else for manager of the year than Rob Thompson at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a hard argument to make to not give it to him, just because I think you consider what this team has done. Now, I think what will hurt the Phillies is that there'll be a wild card team. Typically, those types of awards are going to go to someone that probably wins the division, right? But I mean, you look around and there's so many of these awards are narrative based, and I wouldn't say, I think maybe the Mets would be like the narrative story, right? If the Yankees had held on and been as dominant as they were in like the first half of the season and continue that now through August, September, maybe that's the story. But there's no I would say like dominant storyline here that people are really latching onto. I think the Mets would really be it. But even then, if they fall out of the division race and end up being a wild card team as well, I'm not sure if that's the same case there. So I think the Phillies do have that in their quiver, at least, that they have this this strong narrative about the changeover. And I mean, it's night and day when you consider how this team has performed from Girardi to Thompson. So that's really the base argument for him. And I think it's hard to say that he shouldn't be. He's at the very least in the conversation. Has to be.
Yeah, has to be at the very minimal like a finalist for the award. Because you just see the turnaround that they had. They were on a 68-win pace under Joe Girardi this year, and now, they're on the verge of winning 80 games, on the verge of finishing over 500, if they can win, was it 3 more games, they'll finish over 500 for the first time in I don't even know how long. And right now, if they end up sweeping the Marlins, Rob Thompson, I believe, will finish this season 2 wins shy of what Joe Girardi was able to amass as manager of the Phillies against the Marlins in 2 seasons and 2 months. As Rob Thompson will finish with 12 wins against the Marlins this year if the Phillies are able to sweep them in this series.
Which would be great.
Yes.
I think that too. And you know what's funny is it feels like every season we come into the year talking about, well, if they just did better against the Marlins, and they did. They finally did it. They finally figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, looking here at our trusty website that pulls up everything for us for Phillies Marlins, mcubed.net, the Phillies, the last 3 seasons, Matt, have finished under 500 against the Marlins. 2019, still under Gabe Kapler, they finished 9-10. In the shortened season in 2020, they go 3-7. Last year, they go 9-10. And right now, they are currently 11-6 against the Marlins in 2022. And only one of those wins came under Joe Girardi, and that was that 4-game series back in April down in Miami, where it was just like, it felt like the sky was falling. The last time that the Phillies did win 13 games against the Marlins in a single season happened all the way back in 2010 when they went 13-5 against the Marlins. And then the last time that they won more than 11 games against the Marlins, oddly enough, was the second year really of the downfall from the glory days. 2013, they went 12-7 against the Marlins, and that's the last time that they won more than 11 games in a season against Miami.
Wow. I mean, that really puts it. So I'm trying to find odds on Manager of the Year, and it's not easy. So this is all the way back from July. And it's 2022 NL's Manager of the Year candidates, second half of the MLB season from Hefe Bet. So Rob Thompson was at plus 800. Now again, this is middle of July, All-Star break time. The Phillies weren't in kind of strong as a position as they are now, but obviously highlights a lot about the change. How different this team has looked with him. Dave Roberts of the Dodgers at plus 500 makes a lot of sense. But again, I think when you're talking narrative, when you're talking about Manager of the Year awards, a lot of times it doesn't go to the team that you expect to roll over and be great. We see like voter fatigue all the time across all major sports. Who do we got here? Buck Showalter at plus 150. I would imagine he's probably the favorite, just in general, like we mentioned. Again, if the Mets hang on to the division too, because I think people just like seeing the Mets do well. We don't, but I think naturally people kind of like the bigger markets, like a team like the Mets to be doing well. I think Steve Cohen, for whatever reason, is like people like him. I don't know why. And so I think they have a lot of goodwill. Inevitably, they will build them up to tear them down when they lose in the wild card this offseason. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Mets' demise, whether it's in the NLDS if they somehow hang on to win the division, or I think the way I was listening to Talking Baseball today, and they were breaking down just the way that like the American League playoffs would break down, and I'm pretty sure that if the Phillies were to walk away victorious in that series against the Braves, if the series started today, they would go on to go and play the Mets in the NLDS, which would just be the biggest stress and anxiety inducer for any Phillies fan to have to go Braves-Mets back-to-back, but also just unbelievable scenes to have the New York Mets kick off, a full-blown actual home-and-home series in the playoffs for the Phillies for the first time in a decade.
I got to tell you, playing the Mets in the first round doesn't fill me with a lot of comfort.
No.
I started thinking more and more about the postseason, though, and I think, again, in a 3-game series, too, I think is really the best-case scenario in a sense for the Phillies, though, because I think where this team is at their best is sort of the top-heavy, if you bring out, your best how many pitchers are you bringing to a series like that? Between like 6 and 8, really only probably seeing 6, pitchers, maybe 7, and you're really just bringing like your 10 best guys. Like, I think that actually really favors the Phillies in a lot of ways. And this has been a feeling that I've had about them all season, is that you could sell me more on them winning the World Series than making the playoffs, because I just think this team has that ability in that limited space in those short days, those short games, to have really, really effective hitting, really, really effective pitching. And, I think, too, they've been managed well here down the stretch, too. I think, there's been instances where, they have Mondays off, right, for the rest of the season, which is really crucial. And, I think Rob Thompson has done some smart things in terms of rest and rotation. He also hasn't been afraid to push the envelope a little bit, too, which is a criticism of Girardi. There's been a few times where he's gotten aggressive with pitching and said, no, we're getting the win tonight. And I like that bravery that he showed. So I think there's a lot to like about this Phillies team in a 3-game series, especially because once you get to a 7-game series, that changes a little bit. Depth does become a little more important, and that's where, you might be exposed a little bit on the back end of some of the Phillies' depth. But in a 3-game series where it's sort of just your best guys every other night or every night, I actually really like the Phillies' odds more against most teams in a 3-game series.
And I mean, Zach Eflin and Sir Anthony Dominguez coming back at like almost perfect times too for the bullpen. Sir Anthony looked great last night against the Marlins, and you bring up a 3-game series, Matt, and obviously you have Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler once he comes back from the injured list at the top of the rotation. But who would have thought that a 3-game series for the Phillies would be Nola, Wheeler, Bailey, Falter? Because he has effectively saved this season in a lot of ways late, down the stretch here for the Phillies. When Wheeler's gone down, every single start has been damn near magnificent. Only gives up the 1 run last night, and you kind of had to rely on the offense to pick it up, which they did. But I don't know what the pitching mindset is down at AAA, because not only has it kind of helped Bailey Falter, but I saw a great tweet last night from Dave Esser that said Jose Alvarado got sent down to the minor leagues earlier this year, and somebody at the Iron Pigs told him, just throw cutters, bro. And he's turned into the second coming of Mariano Rivera.
Which is great. You love to see it. Yeah, you mentioned Bailey Falter, but, Andrew Bellotti as well has been like a big boon for especially like this relief pitching, this bullpen. We've gotten help from, I think, some unexpected places for the Phillies in this season. And, Ranger Suarez has, I think, shaken off a lot of it. It's very easy to forget how kind of shaky he looked through the first few months of the season. He's rounded into form. Nola's quietly had a great year. I know that he's had a few blips here and there, but I mean, you could probably say he's been better than Wheeler, who's also been fantastic this season. I think Wheeler has much more like clout and capital, I think, in most fans' minds. Like Wheeler is like that meme of like, I didn't do anything wrong. I know this and I love you. Like, we just, for whatever reason, are so quick to comfort Wheeler and so quick to say, well, Nola sucks. Like, I don't know. Nola's been great this year. It's probably been his best season and most consistent season since his, Cy Young candidacy. And you might even make the case that maybe he's getting some votes for Cy Young this year, right? Like, I don't know that he's done enough to win it, of course, but I think those two as your tip of the spear as well, I think is really fantastic. And again, if you're talking playoffs, you really only need 2 other guys to step up in that mode, and you don't even need guys going necessarily, 6-7 innings. You get guys just to give you 4 or 5 and work your way through. And I think the Phillies can sort of, duct tape it together, so to speak.
Which in years past has been like, let's avoid the bullpen at all costs. And this year they've kind of, pieced it together to be very formidable. I think the one thing that I just am still scratching my head about right now down the stretch, just because of how much he's kind of struggled in the grand scheme of, his season, is why the Phillies have not allowed Bryson Stott to hit leadoff and move Kyle Schwarber down in the lineup, simply because they've needed more power in the middle of the lineup. And continuing to hit him leadoff when he's struggling does you no good. It kind of just puts you behind the 8 ball in a sense, because Schwarber at this stage of his career has kind of become one of those 3 true outcome players where he's either going to strike out, fly out, or hit a home run. I would say just move him down in the lineup a little bit. Put Bryce at the number 3 spot. Let Schwarber hit 4 or 5 for the rest of the season maybe, and let Bryson Stott just continue to hit, because he's had a phenomenal year, since bouncing back from a very slow start, and he's really caught on to be what everyone expects him to be as, the shortstop and or second baseman of the future. And he's hitting, incredibly well right now, and he's one of those table setters at the top of a lineup that you want in the postseason.
Yeah, I think with Schwarber, I feel like so much of it is this has just been the way he's managed all season, and in a sense, I think you can make the case it's worked. I think it is it's very frustrating when Schwarber is not on, but I think he's just such a value to have. I do think it's worth questioning, though, why we haven't seen him, moved outside of that spot, because, like you said, he really is like a 3 outcome guy now, and maybe you have enough power in like that 3 to 5 range already. I don't know that you necessarily need to be like dependent on Schwarber, and maybe some around the edges. I don't think we see it this season, though. I think it's very clear that this is just where they are as a team and how they think about everything. And maybe next season we see something like that. I think next, not to skip ahead all the exciting bits about the rest of this season and the potential playoffs here, but next season is going to be interesting too, because you're hearing stuff about Painter maybe, making a big push to make the roster next season, and you have young guys that have been worked in, and you expect to improve over the offseason, and that's kind of what we had this year too. With some of these guys, Bohm I think is certainly solidified his place, and again it's easy to forget that there was legitimate questions I think over Alec Bohm at the start of the year and about his place, and him potentially going back down to the minors, moving back up. Like there was I think a little bit of concern about him, and that's the I fucking hate this place was truly the turnaround.
Yeah.
For Alec Bohm, which hey, we'll take it.
Sometimes you just gotta fucking hate it here. I think the way that this team is performing now, though, and they're hitting their strides in a lot of places, playing consistently, I think has been, the big case about this Phillies team is, sure, they had that abysmal road trip, but they've bounced back from that, and now, you do still have a couple of big-time series down the stretch here, 7 against the Braves, most notably. You still have 2 against the Blue Jays, who are a playoff team, and you end your season against the Astros on the road, which will be kind of I think I like that series happening at the end of the year, and who knows, what starters will be playing or not, depending on the status of where the Phillies are in the wild card standings, and then obviously the Astros right now are the number 1 team in the American League. But if there are starters playing in, say 2 of those 3 games, I think that's a good way for the Phillies to kind of get a litmus test for the postseason and kind of prepare for a formidable opponent, which right now, if the postseason started today, would be the Braves, and I think there's a lot of similarities between the Astros and Braves this year.
Yeah, definitely. I also think it's a little unfair that Justin Verlander is still this good. I don't know, just doesn't sit right with me that he's still this amazing. So yeah, the Astros are catching them at that time when likely they'll have everything kind of tied up, and you might just get a lot of like platoon guys, they'll be racing, and that could be a crucial series for the Phillies. I mean, you could be talking about, I know we've talked about the magic number already, but I mean, it could be a situation where the Phillies need to take, I don't know, 2 out of their last 5, 2 out of their last 6 to tie up, the playoffs or the wild card spot, and having a series like that could be beneficial for the Phillies. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, and luckily for the way that the Phillies played earlier this year, they have the tiebreaker over the Padres. They have the tiebreaker over the Brewers. So effectively, when you look at the standings in the wild card right now, you can almost add an extra game in hand to where those 2 teams are behind, because the Phillies do have those tiebreakers if things were to, draw even. But let's take a look at our favorite statistical category, the NL East run differential. brought to you by our homies over at Pickup. You guys can go to playpickup.com, start playing the hottest headlines in sports. The NFL is here. All of those NFL props are there for every single week of the NFL season, season-long props, and of course those baseball postseason props will be there as well. So go to playpickup.com and start playing those headlines. Matt, right now the Atlanta Braves still in the lead for the crown of the NL East run differential, sitting a game behind the Mets as well in the division, but they're at a plus 159 run differential. The Mets are at a plus 134. The Phillies are at a plus 74. There's still a decent amount of games left. Do you think the Phillies can finish with a plus 100 or better run differential this year?
Especially that they have a lot of games against the Nationals and Marlins left. Yes, we've seen what a really nice series against the Nationals can do, not only for your confidence but for that difference. So yes, I think it's certainly possible for them to eclipse 3 digits.
I would absolutely love to see that. The Miami Marlins, they are sitting at a negative 102 and retaking the lead for the worst run differential in baseball. That stolen franchise, the Washington Nationals, sitting at a whopping negative 207, sitting at 49 and 93 on the season. The other teams we typically look at, the Pittsburgh Pirates, are at a minus 199 run differential, somehow on a 4-game win streak. They are the stupidest team in baseball this year. The Los Angeles Dodgers are just running away with the Major League run differential title at a plus 320. They have clinched their division already with 2.5 weeks of the season remaining. And the next closest team in the NL West in terms of run differential is the Padres at plus 19.
I mean, it's like they've siphoned all the all the good play for the rest of the division. I don't understand it.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And then you look at a division like the AL Central, where the division leading at 76 and 65 Cleveland Guardians, which if the Phillies were in that division, they'd be winning that division right now. The Guardians are at 76 and 65, and their run differential's a plus 32, and the Chicago White Sox are 73 and 70 in second place in that division with a negative 12 run differential. And then the Minnesota Twins are at 70 and 70 with a plus 16 run differential. You want to talk about a stupid, lousy division? It's the AL Central, or as I've heard people call it, the AL Mid.
Yeah. It just sucks when you look at the Phillies division, and it's like, our poor, my heart goes out to our AL East brethren as well. Just it's a tough time to be an East Division member.
It is a rough go around. Speaking of the AL East, the New York Yankees leading the American League in run differential at a whopping plus 207, heading into these final weeks of the regular season. But I mean, it's looking good for the Phillies right now, sitting at that second place wild card spot, 2 games up on San Diego. The Brewers are a game and a half back of San Diego in terms of the standings, and it's just going to be nice when we finally see that graphic, like you said, that says the Phillies have clinched a postseason berth for the first time since 2011.
It's listen, we're we're crossing fingers in this household still, but yeah, it does feel like we're headed that direction, which feels great.
It is pretty wild that, especially if the postseason started today, that both longest droughts in the National League and American League would come to an end in terms of postseason appearances, because the Mariners are also.
We were just waiting on the Mariners, and I love that about us. I love that we have that friendship, that kinship. I'm glad it seems like we'll be breaking that streak together.
Yes, and then we will hand the torches off to the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and the Detroit Tigers, who have not made the postseason since 2014, and neither team will make it this year.
Rest in peace.
Let's talk about another team that's on their way to the postseason, Matt. Philadelphia Union, sitting at the top of the table of the entire league of MLS. LAFC came to a draw last night, which was phenomenal to see. Minnesota's coach just absolutely coming for LAFC's neck. I don't know if you saw that quote from him at halftime, but those are things that I love to see. Union looking like they're on their way. They're on their way to potentially bringing home some more hardware by the end of the day on October 9th.
Yeah, so they're in possession now of the Supporter Shield race. It is fully in their control. What happens if they win out? It is theirs. And what's interesting too is typically teams, the Union obviously won the Supporter Shield in 2020. Typically, teams that have done that have fallen off. It's very rare for those teams to even make playoffs the next year, which the Union, of course, did. And you can make the case that this team is in many ways better than that team from 2020. Certainly a lot more balanced. I think there's some more maybe high-end talent within this squad. And it just feels like they're peaking at the right time as well. You could compare them to LAFC, who for the first half of the season looked very strong. I think obviously are always going to be sort of the bigger story in a lot of ways. But, we're playing very well. They certainly earned a lot of the discussion around them. But, have obviously struggled a little bit as of late. They've had a little dip in form, and that's allowed the Union to kind of reclaim the spot. It felt far off, even a month and a half ago, but the Union, like we said, have just been on an incredible tear. Scoring. They've scored 25 goals in their last 5 home games, and that has obviously been one of their bigger weaknesses over the past few seasons. I think one of the failures that you could attribute to the lack of success has been that inability sometimes to come up with the goals to be really threatening, because what the Union have done consistently is be very good defensively, is be able to soak up opposition pressure. They are a counterattack team. They like to be direct whenever they get the ball. And now they have, I think, the personnel to really do that. When you consider, Curtin's trident now of Carranza, Ura, and Gazdag, that you just have 3 very, very good attacking players that can make you pay in a lot of different ways. So it's good to see, it's, again, when you just consider how little they've spent, that so much of this has been about like youth development or just like good moves on the margins. It's a great story on top of that. And like I keep saying, it's the best Union team that they've ever had. They're just so complete in so many ways. I know that so often we want to be negative. So often we want to look at this situation and think, well, everyone's rooting against us, or well, this could go. I mean, obviously, once you get to the playoffs, in one game, anything can, of course, happen. But I just think this team has shown a real ability to play under pressure and thrive under that pressure and succeed. There are some potential tricky matchups for them in the playoffs. I'd like to avoid FC Cincinnati because we've just typically not played well against them. But I do think, as far as the East is concerned, Union are the best team. And I think over the course of the entire MLS, too, we are one of the 2 or 3 teams that I think teams really do not want to be playing in the playoffs. I think it's us, LA, and Austin are the 3 teams that I think will give people the most headaches and the most problems. And especially against the Union, when you consider just the defensive record as well, that I think has to give people a lot of pause.
Yeah, the Union have scored the most goals in all of MLS so far this season at 68 goals for, and a measly 22 goals against, which is by far and away the lowest amount surrendered by any team in the entire league. And I mean, when you look at
what's crazy about that too is, you look at the expected goals too, that the Union are overperforming or underperforming, depending on how you want to look at it, by a little over 12 goals. So they were expected to concede actually like 34 goals, but they've only conceded 22. So part of that too is, how those numbers are typically calculated is it takes, the average shot position of all the attackers and defenders and comes up with a number for how often would you expect that shot to go in the back of the net. Part of that obviously doesn't necessarily take into account, body shape, if the player's off balance, on balance, maybe someone closes them down faster, or obviously goalkeeping, which the Union had a fantastic shot stopper in Andre Blake. So yes, you can maybe make the case it's some overperformance in some ways defensively, but even if, it was exactly like for like, this would still be the best defense in MLS. So that's a good spot they find themselves in.
And on paper, I mean, you look at the schedule the rest of the way for the Union, it's very favorable in terms of, who they're matched up against on Saturday. they go down to Atlanta to play Atlanta United. Not a very good team this year. They do have the friendly against Pachuca the following Saturday, and then they wrap up on the road against Charlotte, and then finish up on decision day at home against Toronto.
Yeah, so 2 away games, which could obviously be a little tricky, and typically when you're away from home, and that's why it's so important that the Union, finish top of the East, finish potentially even, with the Supporters Shield, because you're guaranteed any game you play for the rest of the season will be at home, including the finals. So, the ability, home field advantage really has mattered in the MLS historically. And even, like you said, Atlanta, Charlotte, not the best teams, but still, anytime you're going away, it's always going to be a little bit of a tough challenge. But I certainly believe the Union need to win 2 out of their last 3. I would not be shocked that LA, have some more points dropped in them. Just when you consider the way they've played over the recent weeks, it's not a stretch to imagine that they even a draw. And then, obviously that gives the Union a little bit more wiggle room in how they perform. But I still don't think it's crazy to say that the Union just win out this season. Atlanta, Charlotte, not particularly inspiring teams. And then Toronto at home, nothing to play for from Toronto. That can go either way. Sometimes you see teams play a little more free with that in mind. They're not afraid to make mistakes, and therefore, might lead to better attacking play. And, we've seen some strange results on final days across all leagues before. And sometimes a goal goes in early and the team's like, we're done. and just sort of the tidal wave crashes over that, and you get a big win. It's always hard to tell the mentality of how those teams it's going to go.
And I mean, you look at LA the rest of the way when you're looking, Supporter Shield wise. Sunday they host Houston, not a very good team this year. But then their final 2 matches of the season, they're on the road against Portland and on the road against Nashville, who right now I believe are both playoff teams in the West. Yeah, so Portland is the 6th seed right now, and Nashville is the 4 seed in the West. So 2 playoff teams that LA kind of has to maneuver with in the final few matches of the season, where the Union only really have to deal with 1.
Yeah, and LA too. Houston obviously not great. They just fired their manager, but also just recently beat LA 2-1. So it's not inconceivable. And Nashville with Mukhtar is obviously a tough proposition for anyone, in Portland as well. Always a strong team. It feels like we talk so much about LAFC, about Austin, about the Union, and it's just going to be the Timbers again or the Sounders somehow. That would be, I think, the most MLS result out of all of this. These kind of exciting teams that play a little different style and are really each kind of has their own thing about them that I think makes them exciting. And then it's just Portland again somehow.
That would absolutely suck. But we'll see, how things shake out over the next couple of weeks. It's exciting that the Union just continued to be one of the more dominant forces in all of sports, and especially since, they're our squad. I will be at Subaru Park on Sunday, not for soccer, but for the Premier Lacrosse League Championship game. A lot of Philly ties there, so if you're in the area, if you're home, no Eagles game on Sunday. They play Monday Night Football, so if you want to get some, quick feet, hardcore action, and get a chance to take in a championship game, come out to the PLL Championship at Subaru Park on Sunday at 3 o'clock. It's on ABC as well at home, so be sure to check that out. But speaking of the Eagles, Matt, they get their first win of the season against the Hard Knocks hyped up Detroit Lions, 38-35. Very interesting matchup. I don't see how Jonathan Gannon is a head coaching candidate anytime soon after his defensive performance, but you get the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football, which will be a very fun and interesting matchup. Justin Jefferson coming to town, and first home game of the year is always rocking, and we all know what happened the last time the Vikings came to the Link, so very excited for that matchup.
Yeah, can we make it a pink slip game for Justin Jefferson? Something like that. That would be great. But yeah, it's interesting first result for the Eagles. I think people have been maybe a little too critical about it. I think, again, memories are short. We forgot how the Lions, in a lot of ways, were a little more competitive than I think people remember them to be. Ask the Ravens about the Lions last season. Just you get these odd results, especially first week of the NFL season. This is when teams have had the most time to plan as well. So when guys are at their most healthy, so that's why you might see some like oddball results that don't always translate. So I would hesitate to make too many sweeping, decisions about the Eagles defense and even in some ways the Eagles offense or about the Lions. We need a little more time, I think. But the Vikings is an interesting proposition, of course, because we saw that Green Bay defense, I think, is very good. And I think the Vikings were able to make them look at times very bad. And that may point to the fact that the Vikings have a very, very strong offense. We know all about the receiving core that they have. We know all about the weapons they have. But defensively, too, I mean, they gave Aaron Rodgers nightmares. And that's not something that happens very often unless it's like the first week of the NFL season, because we can all remember, or maybe we can't because, again, memories are short, the Packers getting absolutely dusted by the Saints week 1 last year. So I do think that it's a tricky matchup for the Eagles. Strange, too, that we have 2 Monday night games the second week of the season. Typically,
and almost similar kickoff times, too.
Yeah, I was so confused when I looked at that. I mean, cool, I guess, but I just that feels like something that maybe should have been the first week. I don't totally understand why. I think the Emmys might have something to have done with that, but it's just strange that
also weird that the Emmys were on a Monday.
Right. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure who's to blame. Is it a supply chain somehow? Is that
can't get enough broadcasters?
Everything is the supply chain's fault somehow for everything. So maybe that's why.
Or maybe, they just didn't have enough broadcasters that could hack it like they did on Monday Night Football. Because what an abysmal game that was. I think, and we'll have Eagles enemies later this week with the Athletic Minnesota's Arif Hassan, friend of the program. It was a very fun and entertaining episode that you won't want to miss. Looking at, this Vikings offense, there's a bunch of weapons, obviously, from Dalvin Cook to Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and then you have Kirk Cousins, or as I like to call him, Kirk Coupons. He's 2-9 on Monday Night Football in his career, which is the worst mark of active NFL quarterbacks on Monday Night Football. So that's an interesting take there going into week 2. But also, the Eagles since 2016 have not won a week 2 game, so something's got to give there. It's just fantastic scheduling by the NFL. Wow. The offensive line for this Vikings team, what are your expectations for them as they face this Eagles defensive line that hopefully Jonathan Gannon takes some advice from Twitter and realizes that you moved up in the draft to take a 300-pound refrigerator known as Jordan Davis to stuff the run and plays him more. But the Eagles defensive line versus the Vikings offensive line, what are some things you're looking for there in that matchup that I think is going to be a big key to this game?
Well, to pick something famous in Philadelphia lore, I'll quote Rocky. Prediction. Pain. This is not going to be good for the Vikings, I don't think. The offensive line defensive line matchup massively favors, especially along the interior of the Eagles. And obviously it depends on how much they want to play Jordan Davis, but I just don't anticipate a Jordan Davis Garrett Bradbury matchup going well.
But I mean, I love all of the key matchups in this game. The Vikings interior offensive line, which Arif and I talked about, going up against this Eagles front seven is going to be a nightmare for the Vikings because the Packers front seven isn't necessarily as deep and as talented as the Eagles, and especially if Jonathan Gannon remembers that Jordan Davis is on this team, that'll be very valuable. And then you look, the Eagles have a formidable secondary across the board for the first time, I think, since the Super Bowl season. And I think this one's even better when you have Darius Slay, James Bradbury, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and Marcus Epps playing as well as he is. And then you have Avonte Maddox as your slot corner. I think that's a super talented and formidable secondary that's going to be going up against a very talented receiving core. And then I just don't know how I feel about Dalvin Cook wearing his college number. Number 4 looks absolutely gross on him.
Bizarre. It's jarring to look at. But yeah, I think the Eagles too, defensively, I think I take more of that first half than the second half. A lot of times we do see where teams get up big and maybe you just go a little prevent and teams are able to make up the numbers a little bit, and that's I think the true Eagles self is more of what we saw in the first half there defensively, and just were constantly stopping the Lions in a lot of 3-and-outs, and they looked very impressive. So outside of that first drive in that first half, but there really wasn't much to talk about from the Lions' perspective. So Vikings are definitely going to be a more challenging task, though, I would say, than the Lions.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously when football's in season, fantasy football's in season, and we're going to check in just with our fantasy teams throughout the year, and it's brought to you by our pals over at Trophy Smack. Matt, right now, if you go to TrophySmack.com, you can win a lifetime of greatness. You win a lifetime supply of Trophy Smack hardware, plus a special shout-out from investor extraordinaire in Trophy Smack, as seen on Shark Tank, Mark Cuban. One grand prize winner will receive a customizable Trophy Smack hardware for life, exclusive access to new product drops before launch, one Mark Cuban signature belt and congratulatory video clip, and 25 losers will receive a 10-pack of participation ribbons because, hey, if you didn't win, you've lost. So if you go to TrophySmack.com now, you can fill out that information and enter for a chance to win a lifetime of greatness at TrophySmack.com, and you can also use our show link, which is linked in the show notes on audio and in the YouTube description, to go get your fantasy football hardware for the season, because you got to upgrade that fantasy lifestyle. You got to upgrade your league's trophies, not those dusty ones that you got next door to your neighborhood karate dojo or anything like that. So go to TrophySmack.com and use our link in the description to get discounted rates on your hardware. Matt, how'd your fantasy team do this week?
Well, I got to say, one of your co-hosts, Dylan, his dad absolutely just beat me against the ropes. It's really tough. He had like Justin Jefferson, Pat Mahomes. I just got absolutely washed. Beat my wife though, your sister Sarah, in our we have a significant others league. So my two main money leagues, some mixed results, but some weeks it just goes against you, and then what choice do you have?
Yeah, I got absolutely trounced by a friend of Dylan Mazzola, Zach Carbonera, in my one league. It is year 10 of this league, commissioned by one Mikey Ostrowski. He had Lamar. I felt good going into the weekend because he started Allen Robinson on Thursday night, and he was an absolute non-factor. But he had Lamar Jackson. He had the resurgence and rebirth of Saquon Barkley. He has Jonathan Taylor. Gerald Everett scores a touchdown for the Chargers. And then, of course, he had Javonte Williams as well on Monday night for the Broncos. And I had Devontae Smith in my lineup, who gave me an absolute goose egg. But I have Justin Herbert, Devontae Adams. Jerry Jeudy was a fun little last-second swap in for DK Metcalf to give me an ounce of hope on Monday night. But Devontae Smith and then Matt Prater absolutely kicked me where it hurts, all pun intended, because he only had 1 point for me because the Cardinals, I'm guessing Kyler Murray got an early copy of Call of Duty because they looked absolutely terrible against Isaiah Pacheco and the Chiefs, who scored his first NFL touchdown and led the Chiefs in rushing on Sunday, which was pretty neat to see. But I lost 145.42 to 123.66 in my opening matchup of 2022.
Yeah, I felt really bad for Sarah because people say all the time oh, that person had their best week against I always get someone she legit I'm it's gonna sound like I'm exaggerating. I'm gonna sound like one of those guys telling those stories, but I promise you, I've crunched the numbers. I think out of 13 regular season games last year, 8 times that person had their best. She had by far the most points scored against her. When you looked at the points she scored compared with other people, she went 4 and 10 or something in the regular season. She should have gone 9 and 6. She was just so unlucky, and so I felt bad because we also do in that league top scorer gets a little money bonus every week. So I was the top scorer this week by a pretty significant margin because I'm not gonna do the roster bait thing, but I have Lamar Jackson, DeAndre Swift, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson. That was the heavy hitters were out last week, and I felt bad. She did very respectable though, and just got, again, just supremely unlucky.
Well, hey, in in a devil's advocate situation there, at least the winner's circle money stays in your house.
Right. That is the nice thing. Our wins are combined.
Right. So we'll do some fantasy. How'd the best balls go?
Ooh, best balls we're doing all right. Best ball's always a real roll of the dice. We got 2 leagues we're looking very nice in. One of them I'm already I'm already out. I did not do as many best balls as I've done in years past. I cut it down significantly, but we got some lineups that I think can do some damage over the course of the year.
Yeah, in terms of the daily stuff, I feel like you and I did really well. You had your 2 best ball leagues that did well, and Thursday Night Football, I had a $100 parlay hit on the Rams and Bills, I was sweating it out because Matthew Stafford looked like he was just not going to pull through for me, but he did eclipse the 225 plus passing yards that I needed. So thankfully that went through, but gonna need the Eagles to start covering a little more because not being able to cover 3.5 against the Lions was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I think too the lines will settle down now because you have a little bit more information. And obviously then the lines will adjust to that. But I think first week is always challenging because there's I think I can't imagine how many people are out on survivor pools just based off of like the 49ers, even the Giants. I think we're a surprise in a lot of ways. I'm sure no one likes to talk about it, but the Dolphins absolutely handling the Patriots. Weird how we just don't want to give to it any credit whatsoever.
They look good.
Believe me, I'm full and on the 2-0 experience, but I just think week 1 always offers up a little bit of
a tie week 1.
We almost had 2.
Yeah,
I couldn't
by the same score.
Could not believe my eyes with the Bengals Steelers game. It felt like a sick joke that many missed field goals. Even the it's bad when the announcers are like, what is going on? When the announcers who have seen it all and are very well prepared and are professional are just as bewildered as like the average fan, I think that's in a bad place. I saw this tweet by Doable Doink on Twitter. One of my favorite tweets of the weekend. Absolutely loved it. Got to give a lot of credit. Camera pants a football player who fumbled. Joe Buck, and here's Johnson responsible for that goal line fuck up. He's distraught because he's thinking about what a failure is. You think he should kill himself, Troy? Aikman, watch Metcalf alone at the bottom of the screen. Just art. Modern art right there.
Amazing.
Some of these announcers are just like in totally different worlds. So one is in such a different place. It reminds me so much of like the TNT NBA crew. Where it's like Jeff Van Gundy's just crying about something. Mark Jackson is like leading a sermon half the time. Like it's just and Marv Albert usually no clue. Who's on the court even. So I really enjoyed that this weekend. It was nice having football kind of dominate the Sunday afternoon and evening again.
Yeah. I think this was my favorite tweet, very Eagles related. I talked about it on the most recent episode that's up. That you guys can go back and listen to that I recorded on Monday. This is from Dennis Selman on Twitter. He said, for Eagles fans not happy with how convincing the win was, note that week 1 is weird. 2021 playoff teams playing against non-playoff teams went 1-5 across the league. The Eagles were the only such team to win.
Listen, that's greatness.
That's week 1, baby. And at least nobody is as terrible at their job as Nathaniel Hackett, because that Monday night game was brutal.
Here's the thing to remember, and we talked about this a lot in like the NBA, because this is typically more of like an NBA situation where a coach is hired before a star joins a team, and there's no guarantee that these styles line up in the same way or that they have the ability necessarily to coach. It's a different feeling coaching the Broncos maybe in like a more transition year, or maybe in a year without the expectation of having Russell Wilson and having to work with that. It's week 1. You don't want to say too much, but there was definitely some cowboy behavior, let's say.
There was some great tweets from that game too. And I think, just the piss poor clock management, and I watched Andy Reid for more than a decade, and he would never do such a thing. And I thought the funny tweets that I caught were just, remakes of Russell Wilson's Broncos Country, Let's Ride. I saw Broncos Country, Let's Die, Broncos Country, Let's Cry, and Broncos Country, Let's Kick That Ball.
64-yarder, Kyle. When you have the chance to go for 64 yards, you just have to do it. That's
not even just that. It's when you have the chance to go for a 64-yarder with your kicker. Shout out Brandon McManus, Temple Tough. He going into that kick was 1 for 7 in his career on field goal attempts 60 yards or more.
Hey, but he's tried it 7 times. So it's like.
And he tweeted. He said, "I told him to get me to that hash. I got to make the kick."
So dumb. Not a great week 1, I would say, for the Broncos out there.
Great
Shout
week
out to-
1
shout
for
out
the
to Geno
quotes.
Smith.
Great quote.
Content-wise, we're living.
Yes, Shelby Harris saying "Let's ride" in his post-game interview after getting traded to the Seahawks, and then to all the haters that wrote Geno Smith off, he didn't write him back. That was just an all-timer from a guy, and it's hard to really conceptualize that Geno Smith has been in the NFL for a decade.
Yeah. He's had a long career, and listen, good performance by him. Because let's not forget, I think, as much as it was about Russell Wilson, and the Seahawks and him returning, it's just as much about Geno and the opportunity to prove himself. I think a lot of people writing him off in a lot of different ways, and the chance for him to be a starter and kind of own that role. Because let's be honest, Drew Lock is applesauce. That guy is just not capable of getting it done. So shout out to Geno Smith.
Yeah, Drew Lock caught strays earlier this summer from the U.S. Open Twitter account, and then he caught a stray on Monday night when SVP brings Ryan Clark on after every Monday night game. He was using the telestrator and shadow spotlighted Drew Lock on the sideline and basically said, "When Drew Lock is here, the Seahawks are doing something right."
Yeah. It's tough.
Tough scene.
I can console myself knowing that Drew Lock's made a lot of money and is going to be able to have a nice life.
Yeah, and his legacy will be him dancing on the Broncos bench and being remixed with every single song under the sun.
Yeah. Or when I think of Drew Lock, I think of it was a video of him in the tunnel, and he was just saying something to the effect of, "Sometimes when I throw it, I have no idea what's about to happen." And there we go. That's just
very similar to the quote that we got from Nick Chubb as well. I don't know if you saw that quote. They asked him, the Browns were playing the Panthers this weekend. They asked him about going up against Baker Mayfield. How do you guys feel you're going to perform? And he said, "Well, we all know Baker really well, so we don't really know what to expect."
And you know what?
An all-timer.
I think that's fair because you saw the best and worst of Baker in that game. So shout out to Nick Chubb.
And then looks like the Cowboys season is pretty close to done.
Insert Simpsons gif, old man walking through the door, taking his hat off, putting it right back on, walking back out. Jesus. Tough scenes.
Unreal.
You gotta say. That was it's not often that I'm happy to turn the game off on Sunday night and go to bed, but I was I checked out at 9:10. I was this is not for me. This is not interesting enough for my attention. So, you got 2 months of Dakless Cowboys action. So maybe Jimmy G sweepstakes. Who knows?
Been hearing Mason Rudolph a lot,
Mason Rudolph would be hilarious. What's Duck Hodges doing?
Yeah, quack quack.
Let's somebody ring up Andy Dalton, bring him back to Dallas.
Yeah, he's down with the Saints doing nothing. They got Taysom Hill that can fill in.
Why
for
not
Jameis.
Taysom Hill?
Yeah, just get a tight end to play
They freed
for
up
you.
some cap space over the summer, I think, for Taysom, right?
He's just making fake money.
Ponzi scheme.
Cowboys only team in week 1 not to score a touchdown in the NFL, which is pretty sad. Also, you'll love this, a little teaser for Eagles enemies this week. Arif Hassan always has a little bit in his Twitter display name, and it used to be Arifasan Hexagon, just making a play on all the NFT profile pictures. Then he went to Arifasan, no longer a hexagon. So he had a line in our podcast episode that said, Viking longboats 1, NFTs 0, because at least at some point we've recovered Viking longboats from under the ocean. Nobody will ever recover the NFTs from OpenSea.
Very true. That's got some layers to it. I like it.
Matt, we are 1 week away from season 43 of our favorite reality show, Survivor. Very excited for this season. It's going to be tough for us to go with a winner, which we'll pick our winner next week, as we always do, leading into the episode. But figure we'd actually dissect this cast now that it's fully out there, and try to, give everybody a little feel to get back into the Buffs and Snuffs season that is Survivor. But no Northeast firefighters or anybody from New Jersey, which is tough.
My cheat code has been
it's been found. But looking at this cast this season, very interesting cast. A lot of different competitors this year, and the tribes are split up in a way that I think are going to make things pretty interesting from the start. And I know last week you said you're out on the blue tribe, so we'll see, as we go. But I have the cast pulled up here. I'll read off some of the ones that look interesting and their descriptions here from whattowatch.com. So our first one here, Matt, from the Vesey tribe is Cody Assenmaker, who's from Honolulu, Hawaii, and he's in elevator sales.
Yeah. What's interesting about elevator sales is there's usually one company that services the 400 square miles, and it's that's it. So it sounds like a made up job, but then they're usually the only one, and it's you would actually be shocked how many elevators there are that need servicing and sales.
Yeah, elevator sales, it's just a job that, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down.
It has its ups and its downs, but it's mostly pretty good.
Cody believes that having wisdom ahead of his time will help him communicate with players older than him, and his youthful spirit will allow him to relate to the younger players. He is 35 years old, so he's right in that sweet spot.
He's got a great smile, too. Say that.
We've got Lindsay Carmine from the Coco tribe. She's a pediatric nurse from Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Her dream to be on Survivor has been present for over 2 decades. The 42-year-old says that she's relentless, resourceful, and compassionate, but people are surprised by how competitive she is, especially as she gets older.
I will say nurses historically have done pretty well on Survivor too. So I don't know how many winners have been nurses, but there've been Sari, I can remember, was a nurse and certainly one of the better Survivor players of all time. So, they got good people. It's how the bartender was always someone people gravitated towards being good at Survivor. Nurses are the same thing. They constantly have conversations and wipe up poop. So I mean, they've seen it all. They're afraid of nothing.
They know how to deal with the shitty situations.
Yes. We're 2 for 2 on great occupation puns. So.
The Coco tribe also has Cassidy Clark, who was cast for season 41 of Survivor, but the pandemic hit just days before she was set to play. The 26-year-old fashion designer from Austin, Texas, prepared harder during reapplication, and she's now back. Cassidy admires past player Kim Spradlin as her, quote, low-key assassin game, and plans to, quote, manipulate and persuade others in her own way.
And I'd love to hear that. That is what we like. If you're gonna be Kim anyone, fan. Be a Kim Spradlin. If you're bucking for my vote, that's how you get it.
Next up from the Vesey tribe, we have Justine Brennan, who you might think she's just an unathletic girly girl. However, her father raised her to be the son he never had. Stemming from Marina Del Rey, California, the 29-year-old is in cybersecurity sales and says that she's, quote, way more emotionally intelligent than book smart, which she believes will be a huge attribute when interacting with the other players.
Okay. You got to back it up. You're going to make those claims about yourself. You got to back it up.
We've got Gio Bustamante, great name, also on the Coco tribe. Having quit his job to join Survivor, 36-year-old Gio Bustamante is arriving from Honolulu, Hawaii. The project manager says that laziness and people who don't have common courtesy are his pet peeves. Hello, Deshaun. When asked to describe which past player he'll play his game most like, he said it would have to be a combination of John Cochran and Boston Rob. I am not as physical as Rob, but I will be strategic like Cochran. Good luck, pal.
Little shot at Boston Rob saying he's not strategic. I think Boston Rob read that. He'd be a little upset by that.
Yeah, let's not forget Boston Rob held daycare court.
Yeah. Give a little credit to old Rob there.
Next on the Vesey tribe, at 43 years old, Nneka Ejiri is the oldest woman on season 43. The pharmacist from Weatherford, Texas, immigrated from Nigeria and is a mother of two with a third on the way. She plans to play like Sari Fields, who played hard without seeming to on the surface. I can influence others to make decisions, and they'll think it was their idea the whole time, she said.
Again, you're going to compare yourself to Sari. I got to see it first. I got to see it.
Also, the way that this is worded, like, is she competing on Survivor pregnant?
I think.
That would be wild.
I don't know if that would be a first or not. I think it is.
Yeah. And then we have Mike Gabler from the Baka tribe. He's a 52-year-old heart valve specialist from Meridian, Idaho, a self-described intense, energetic, and fun person. Mike thinks he'll play the game most like past player Sandra Diaz-Twine. She was always in the right place at the right time. She had phenomenal strategies and gameplay.
Get bad vibes off Mike. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Mike feels like we won't be talking about him much. That's it. Sorry, Mike, but...
The next player close to home for us as well is Carla Cruz Godoy from Newark, Delaware, where she's an educational project manager. The 28-year-old grew up in a low-income household to Mexican immigrant parents. Carla lives by the motto, if you don't like something, change it, and will utilize her resilient nature and eavesdropping skills to take the prize.
I like the inclusion of eavesdropping, because maybe she'll go Tony route and build like a spy shack, and I would like to see that personally. Bury yourself under sand. Let me see that.
Just, hand binoculars. We have James Jones on the Coco tribe, who's a 37-year-old event planner from Philadelphia. When he was 12 years old, he won the United States Chess Open, the largest chess tournament in the U.S., for his rating bracket. James thrives and finds a certain comfort in chaos, which he believes will lend a hand in him becoming the sole survivor.
One of my regrets in life is being as old as I am, which is not really that old, and still not understanding how to play chess. Maybe I should call up James. Maybe he'd be able to help me out.
And then we have just a Yule lookalike, Owen Knight.
It's like Yule and Woo.
Yeah. On the Baka tribe, Owen Knight is a 30-year-old college admissions director from New Orleans. He considers himself an unassuming triple threat, which will be the key to him winning the $1 million. Quote, I would love to play a similar game to Adam Klein. He kept his threat level low, had good relationships with everyone, and was his authentic superfan self. I
don't want to be mean, but I think that may be the first time someone said they want to model the game after Adam.
Yes.
Not an easy to replicate game, I would say.
Yeah, very difficult. The Vesey tribe also has Noelle Lambert, a 25-year-old from Manchester, New Hampshire, and a U.S. Paralympian who competed at the 2020 Summer Games in Tokyo. After an accident, Noelle had her leg amputated in 2016, but has never let her prosthetic define her. She plans to channel Kelly Wentworth's second season in her own game. Her tribe mates didn't think she was a big threat, but she found hidden immunity idols and created blind sides to further herself in the game.
Okay, I like the ambition.
Then we have Sammy Layadi, who's 19 years old from Las Vegas.
We got to talk about the occupation here. I need at least 10 seconds on being a pet cremator. Listen, that can't be just like, that's it. He just burns the pets once it passed on, and that's it. That is all he does? There's that many pets? That just seems
Egregious.
That seems like the thing from House Hunters. It's like, I'm a pet cremator and my wife is a macaroni art specialist. Our budget is $2.1 million. Like, a pet cremator? I've
That is
never
a
heard of that. It's like,
wild thing.
I could see that as a task you may have to do as a part of being, some other job.
Yeah.
But that being your sole job, like, that's how you introduce yourself, as a pet cremator.
At 19 years old.
I'm a little worried about this one. That's all I'll say.
Well, it goes on to feel even more worried because he calls himself unpredictable, tenacious, and indecisive, and is into sports, fitness, and journaling. Sammy says that he's, quote, too conversationally and emotionally experienced with people to be unaware of my standing in the game at all times. He's also too determined to get comfortable.
Those feel like words that will come back.
Yes. Quite the cast. There's a few more here. We have Jesse Lopez, who's joining the cast from Durham, North Carolina. The 30-year-old went from being a gang member to turning his life around with a political science PhD. Jesse has researched voting behavior for years and believes he can adapt to any environment and build relationships with anyone. I'm definitely bringing an academic mindset to the game because I've spent more hours thinking about how people vote than Sandra and Boston Rob combined, he said.
Invoking the names of some very powerful people. You gotta be careful.
Invoking the names of the Island of the Idols. Then we have Ryan Medrano from the Coco Tribe. If you ask Ryan why he believes he can be the sole survivor, he says that he's a triple threat who can socialize, use his strength, and be quick at puzzles. The 25-year-old warehouse associate from El Paso, Texas, was born 3 months early with mild cerebral palsy. Doctors said that he would never walk, but he was able to after 4 years of therapy.
Okay. Respect. Love it.
Then we have Dwight Moore from the Vesey Tribe. He's 22 years old and a graduate student from Collierville, Tennessee. Dwight Moore, he hopes to emulate Wendell Holland's Ghost Island game, where he had a strong social game, create bonds, and performed well in challenges. If I set my mind to something, I'm giving it everything until I see that goal met.
Again, some interesting names people are like. Wendell's not someone I've seen idolize very often.
Yes.
Wendell had a great season though, so fair enough.
Speaking of House Hunters, I'm pretty sure he has his own HGTV show now.
And good for Wendell.
We have Elizabeth Ellie Scott, who is a clinical psychologist from Salt Lake City. The 31-year-old considers herself to be clever, perspective, and authentic. When she's not on Survivor, you can find her rock climbing, skiing, and partaking in karaoke at dive bars. Ellie believes she'll win thanks to her, quote, natural social skill and cutthroat strategy.
I can tell you right now, that's going to be a fan favorite pick. Anytime people have any sort of psychology background, I think people really gravitate towards that.
Yes.
They're winner picks.
We have Mariah Young from Philadelphia as well. She's a proud teacher. The 28-year-old describes herself as colorful, energetic, and joyful, and enjoys shopping, traveling, and creating content. She believes that being, quote, super lovable and not an immediate threat will help her win season 43.
And that has been a viable strategy. And I would say she describes herself as colorful, and that is a very good descriptor for her if you've not seen her cast picture. Colorful is the word. Yes.
And then the final castaway, Janine Zhang, making her way to Fiji from San Francisco. She is a UX designer. The 24-year-old who enjoys backpacking, photography, and running thinks that she could be the sole survivor because, quote, I can create relationships with people from completely different backgrounds and juggle the nuances of my different alliances.
Giving us a little Xander vibe there with
yes.
the job and some of the self-descriptors. So.
Quite the cast. Matt and I will make our full-blown decision on our podcast winner, which if you haven't tuned in for the last 2 seasons of Survivor, Matt and I picked the runner-up each of the last 2 seasons with Deshaun and Mike. So we'll see if we can improve upon that and actually pick the sole survivor this season. A couple Philly connections, which is interesting, as well as a Newark, Delaware spot there as well. But Survivor comes back next week, which means we're talking about it on the podcast. So if you're a Survivor fan, we are your place to be for Survivor pre-shows. And Matt, we do have breaking news here as we wrap up the show. Rhys Hoskins was hit on his hand by a pitch and exits the game and heads for an X-ray.
Great. Just in fantasy baseball playoffs, depending on Rhys Hoskins. It's cool.
Thanks, Miami. Unreal. Make sure you guys are following us on the socials at Underground PHI on Twitter, Instagram. Follow Facebook.com/UndergroundSportsPHI, Twitch.tv/UndergroundSportsPHI. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Check out the website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com. Subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews as well. It helps more people find the show and get involved in the action underground. And, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. You get full video episodes of every single podcast on our network. And we're on that hashtag Road to 1K Gauntlet Challenge, which Top Bins threw theirs down last week. You guys are going to be going back in time to 2006, which I think will be very, very exciting, breaking down that Germany and Italy World Cup match. I think that'll be very entertaining from you and Dom.
Yeah, one of my favorite games of all time. So get us to 1K, and you'll get to hear me talk about it.
So subscribe to the YouTube, smash that like button, ring the bell icon, and of course comment down below on everything we talked about on tonight's show and anything that comes to mind when it comes to your favorite Philadelphia sports teams and or Survivor. Big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen: Main Auto LLC, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland, Pickup, Tomahawk Shades, Kenwood Beer, and Bino Board. All of their info is linked in the description on YouTube and in the show notes on audio. And this has been episode number 464 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. For Matt, I'm KB. Stick around. Top Bins is about to go live on the Twitter and Facebook, as well as Dom's Twitch, I'm pretty sure. So stay tuned for that as Matt and Dom break down everything that did not happen in England this week because of the passing of the Queen. And breaking down the Champions League where Liverpool got a much-needed win, Matt.
God bless. God bless it.
So for Matt, I'm KB. Until next time, we're getting the heck out of here. We are signing off. Peace.